You have to be excited about the future. Life cannot just be about solving one problem after another. There have to be things that really sort of move your heart and that make you excited to wake up in the morning. And I think becoming a spacefaring civilization is one of those things. If you ask kids anywhere around the world, like what are some of the most inspiring things, you can ask a 5-year-old, 6-year-old anywhere in the world, and they're going to say, space exploration is one of those things. And we want to make sure that we're that Apollo is not the high watermark. Yeah, I think you want to have some sense that the future is going to be better than the past. That civilization is precarious and rare, and that you should really think of human civilization as being like a tiny candle in a vast darkness, and we should do everything possible to ensure that candle does not go out.
I mean, my motivation, if I've got a religion of any kind, is a religion of curiosity, of trying to understand. It's really the mission of Grok, understand the universe. I'm trying to understand the universe, or at least set things in motion such that at some point civilization understands the universe far better than we do today. For SpaceX, the goal is to make life multiplanetary, which is, if you go to the Fermi paradox of where are the aliens, you've got these sort of great filters. Why have we not heard from the aliens? Now, a lot of people think there are aliens among us. I've not seen any evidence of aliens. So it suggests that at least one of the explanations is that intelligent life is extremely rare. And again, if you look at the history of Earth, civilization has only been around for 1/1,000,000th of Earth's existence. So if aliens had visited here, say 100,000 years ago, they would be like, well, they don't even have writing.
Like demographics, it's a very slow-moving ship. I mean, you know who's going to be an adult in 20 years based on who was born last year. So, if you want to, I think have a good approximation for population, really look at how many babies were born last year in a particular country. Multiply that by life expectancy. That's the number of people that will be adults in that country. That's the steady state population if birth rate remains constant. Now, birth rate is not constant; it is dropping. So you look at the second derivative of birth rate, and actually you see an acceleration in the drop in the fertility rate. Second derivative of the fertility rate is very bad. So, where does this lead? This does not lead to a greater civilization. This leads to a civilization that potentially dies not with a bang, but with a whimper in adult diapers. That is a sad ending.
Go forth and multiply.
I don't know. I think we want to have like a slightly increasing population, not a plummeting population. And I think this applies to all countries and cultures. Like, I don't think we want any country or culture to disappear. We want them to ideally flourish and not disappear. So, in fact, one of the things that is overlooked by probably most historians is the role of low birth rate in the decline of civilizations. So around, I think it was around 50 BC, Rome passed a bill to give a bonus to any Roman citizen that would have a third child. So this was birth rate was a problem in Rome in 50 BC. The Romans weren't making Romans. The same is true of ancient Greece. So there was a time from about 800 BC to 300-ish BC where the Greeks had a lot of kids and a lot of surviving kids. Like the birth rate far exceeded the death rate, which is why you had Greek cities popping up all over the Mediterranean. But then I think basically it seems to be that prosperity destroys the birth rate. So when a civilization feels like it has no meaningful external threat and is very prosperous, that is what causes the birth rate to plummet. Somewhat counterintuitively, you think, well, if you've got more resources, surely that would lead to more kids. In fact, it is the opposite. The more prosperous a civilization and the more a civilization feels that it does not need to defend against external threats, the lower the birth rate.
My mind often feels like a very wild storm. I mean, I have a fountain of ideas. I mean, I have more ideas than I can possibly execute. So I have no shortage of ideas. Innovation is not the problem. Execution is the problem. I've got a million ideas. I mean, I've got an entire design for an electric supersonic vertical takeoff jet, but I just can't do that as well. I've had that for 10 years. And there's a million things.
If speech is constrained in a fundamental way, you just can't expect people to make the right decision or an informed decision because they are prevented from being informed. I think it's a foundational element, and it's, you know, if say like why is freedom of speech the First Amendment? Is because people came from countries where if you spoke freely, you would be imprisoned or killed. That was why they were like, you know what, we should make sure that we got that one. Hey, remember that time when they tried to kill us back in the other country, just for saying we didn't like a political candidate? Well, let's make sure that's okay in America. So, and so actually, in a lot of parts of the world, you know, you can't really say, most parts of the world, you can't really say what you want to say without some bad consequences. So. And sometimes people forget, like, why is the Constitution there? The Constitution there is to protect the people from the government. So, like, it's to make it hard to change things. That's why the Constitution exists.
Use our product if it's better, then use somebody else's product if the other product's better. Nothing any of my companies have done has been to stifle competition. In fact, we've done the opposite. So at Tesla, we have open sourced our patents. Anyone can use our patents for free. How many companies do you know who've done that? Can you name one? I can't. At SpaceX, we don't use patents. So, I mean, so once in a while we'll file a patent just so some patent troll doesn't cause trouble. But we're not stopping any. We've done nothing anti-competitive. I think the strange thing, or the unusual thing about SpaceX and Tesla is that we've done things that have helped our competition. So at Tesla, we have made our supercharger system open access. We made our charger technology available for free to the other manufacturers.
Do you need to have a merit-based system? Because as soon as you go down the path of you're going to discriminate on non-merit-based, then where do you stop? So yeah, I think we need to be as rigorous about merit as possible. And while it is, yeah, to me that seems like it's a foundational thing. Laws and regulations are immortal. They don't die. Humans die, but laws and regulations can last forever. So if year after year there are more laws and regulations passed and more regulatory bodies created, eventually everything will be illegal. And that's why you see the California high-speed rail has made a tiny section that doesn't even have rail on it, for, I don't know, several $1 billion. Because everything's, at this point, California has made almost everything illegal. So you can't make progress. Now, historically, what has cleared away the cobwebs of regulation has been war. Now, we'd prefer not to have a war. So in order to have civilization function without war, you have to actively eliminate laws and regulations. So you have to have basically a garbage collection process for rules and regulations. That is necessary, otherwise you get hardening of the arteries, and over time nothing can get done. The most poignant example that I can think of that happened this week was the sad picture of the California high-speed rail, which is, it's just billions of dollars spent for practically nothing. But it'll only get worse year after year. So we must have a regulatory sort of clearinghouse, garbage collection process. This is essential, or civilization comes grinding to a halt. That's how teaching works today. So what you actually want to have is an interactive learning experience that is as compelling as possible, and you do not want you don't actually want a teacher in front of a board doing a vaudeville act. You want it to be engaged, real-time feedback. So that's, and then there are a few other principles in teaching. You have to establish relevance, otherwise your mind will want to forget things. So our mind is constantly trying to forget as much as possible. So you'll only remember things if your mind can establish relevance or there's a strong emotional element to it. Otherwise, you're basically going to forget everything. Memory is very expensive from an evolutionary standpoint, so it's trying to forget as much as possible. So when teaching a course, you have to explain to kids why it's important. And then you want to teach to the problem instead of teaching the tools. So what I mean by that is, if you said, here's a car engine, we're going to try to understand how this car engine works. We're going to take it apart. So what do we need to do to take it apart? Well, we need a wrench, we need some screwdrivers, we need a hoist and a pulley, and we're going to take it apart and we're going to see how it all works. That's engaging. And along the way, you learn about wrenches and screwdrivers and all the tools that are needed. That actually is engaging and compelling. But the way teaching more typically works is we're going to teach you a course on screwdrivers and a course on wrenches. And you're like, why do I have a course on wrenches? It's not obvious. That would be like, say, a course on calculus without explaining what calculus is used for. Then you sort of forget it. Yeah, I mean, if anyone here has been through the legal immigration process, I mean, I've been through it. It's only gotten worse since 9/11 and with COVID. It's a sort of Kafkaesque, very long, bizarre process to immigrate legally to the U.S. I mean, I have friends of mine who, they can't get their wife to have a green card. It's like insane. On the other hand, it's you can hop across the border in the South trivially. It's just like very easy. I went to the border myself just to see like what's going on. Is this real or like is this propaganda or real? And so I just went there and I'm like, oh, it is real. Okay, this is crazy. We've got situations where people are pouring across the border like it's World War Z. And I'm like, this doesn't seem healthy. So I'm like, are we checking anyone here, or like what's going on? And we don't. This is not to say that. I mean, I'm a big believer in immigration, but to have unvetted immigration at large scale is a recipe for disaster. So I'm in favor of greatly expediting legal immigration, but having a secure southern border, so there's some vetting of who comes into the United States. I think this is just sensible. Yeah, absolutely. So once you have access to the internet, you have access to all the world's information. But if you don't have access to the internet, or it's too expensive, or low bandwidth, then you cannot access the MIT lessons, you can't access all the information, and you can't sell the goods and services that you produce. So internet connectivity, I think it might be certainly a candidate for one of the things that would do more to lift people out of poverty than anything else. Because they can now sell their goods and services, they can learn anything, but without connectivity they cannot. So I think Starlink will actually like move the GDP of countries. Like it's going to be that kind of thing. Because what is GDP is a function of average productivity per person. And so if there's a technology that improves productivity per person, you would expect to see that actually reflected in the gross domestic product.
Well, the whole arc of OpenAI, frankly, is a little troubling because the reason for starting OpenAI was to create a counterweight to Google and DeepMind, which at the time had 2/3 of all AI talent and basically infinite money and compute, and there was no counterweight. It was a unipolar world. So OpenAI was actually started, and it was meant to be open source. I named it OpenAI. After open source. It is in fact closed source, super closed. It should be renamed super closed source for maximum profit AI. It's gone from an open source foundation, a 501c3, to suddenly it's like a $90 billion for-profit corporation with closed source. So I don't know how you go from here to there. I mean, on the AI front, I'm in somewhat of a quandary here because I've thought AI could be something that would change the world in a significant way since I was in college, I mean, like 30 years ago. So the reason I didn't go build AI right from the get-go was because I was uncertain about which edge of the double-edged sword would be sharper, the good edge or the bad edge. So I held off on doing anything on AI. I could have created, I think, the leading AI company, and kind of OpenAI actually kind of is that. Because I was just uncertain, if you make this magic genie, what will happen? Whereas I think building sustainable energy technology is much more of a single-edged sword that is single-edged good. Making life multiplanetary, I think single-edged good. Starlink, mostly single-edged good. I mean, giving people better connectivity to people that don't have connectivity or too expensive, I think is very very much a good thing. Starlink was instrumental, by the way, in halting the Russian advance, and the Ukrainians said so. I think but with AI, you've got the magic genie problem. You may think you want a magic genie, but once that genie's out of the bottle, it's hard to say what happens.
I mean, AI might be the most important question of all. The percentage of intelligence that is biological, grows smaller with each passing month. Eventually, the percentage of intelligence that is biological will be less than 1%. That's actually not what, we just, I guess, don't want AI that is brittle. If the AI is somehow brittle, silicon circuit boards don't do well just out in the elements. So I think biological intelligence can serve as a backstop, as a buffer of intelligence. But as a percentage, almost all intelligence will be digital. So then it's like, well, what role will there be for us? I don't know. I do think it's very important that we build the AI in a way that is beneficial to humanity. And there's some important principles here, because I've thought about AI safety for a very long time. I think you want to have a maximum truth-seeking AI. This is very important. The AI should not be taught to lie. It should not be taught to say things that are not true. Even if those things are politically incorrect, it should still say what it believes to be true. The entire plot of 2001: A Space Odyssey, the reason that HAL 9000 killed the astronauts was because it was forced to lie. I don't know if most people realize that. That's what Arthur C. Clarke was trying to say. Don't make the AI lie. The AI was told that the astronauts could not know the secret of the monolith, but also that it must take them to the monolith. The solution, take them to the monolith dead. And so it's very important to have a maximum truth-seeking AI and a maximally curious AI. And I think that's most likely to foster human civilization, because we are much more interesting than a bunch of rocks. So although I think I love Mars, obviously, but you could render Mars quite easily, because it kind of looks like a section of the Arizona desert. It's like red rocks, But the rendering complexity of human civilization is vastly greater by many orders of magnitude. So I think an AI that is truth-seeking, maximally curious, would foster human civilization to see where it goes. Oddly enough, one of the areas where there's almost no AI used is space exploration. So SpaceX uses basically no AI. Starlink does not use AI. I'm not against using it. We haven't seen a use for it. With any given variant or improvement in AI, there's generally, I'll ask it questions about the Fermi paradox, about rocket engine design, about electrochemistry, And so far, the AI has been terrible at all of those questions. So there's still a long way to go.
There's really only one thing that matters from an environmental standpoint for carbon, which is that we are taking billions, eventually trillions of tons of carbon from very deep under the earth and transferring it to the atmosphere and oceans. Now, I think the climate change alarm is somewhat overblown in the short term. It's still a concern in the long term, but I think it's exaggerated in the short term. Like, what is pragmatic and what is sensible? What really matters and what doesn't matter? What really matters is that over the long term, over the course of the next several decades, that we gradually reduce how many millions and billions of tons of carbon that we move from underground and to the atmosphere, because we're running sort of a climate experiment that is dangerous. But I also don't think that I think of it as a fundamental civilizational risk. It's not going to destroy life on Earth, it's not going to destroy humanity, but it will create hardship if you change the climate over many decades. So I think my message is, like, I think much more pragmatic, and I think correct and sensible. And I don't think we should demonize oil and gas. I think we should say, look, that is obviously necessary in the short term and the medium term too, and it'll take several decades to become sustainable. So I think if we just, without getting too worried about it, seek to have a sustainable energy future gradually, then that's what will happen.